They gave me a plastic chair in the church basement. That's where I watched my daughter get married through a live stream on someone's iPad while folding programs that had already been folded. I paid for everything, the dress, the flowers, the reception hall. But when the processional music started and the photographer began snapping, I wasn't in frame, not even close. I smiled, stayed quiet, and after the last dance ended, I changed my will with one phone call. There was no nameplate, no reserved sign, no gentle explanation. Just a metal folding chair, squeezed between boxes of leftover programs and a cart full of dusty hymnals. That was my place, in the basement of St. Mark's, watching my only child marry through a cracked iPad screen, while the wedding coordinator's teenage daughter live-streamed from upstairs. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 seconds, blinking at the setup. The smell of basement must and old coffee hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of her bouquet that had been carried down here after photos. I felt the chill of concrete walls against my back, and something inside me crumpled. I looked down at my dress, sage green silk, custom-tailored. I had spent 4 months finding the perfect shade, something that would complement but not compete with her color scheme. 4 months of, "What do you think of this one, sweetheart?" and getting back, "Whatever works for you, Mom," in that distracted tone she'd perfected since the engagement. But no one had told me. No one said, "Patricia, we've made alternate arrangements." No one even looked at me when I arrived at the church, not even Savannah. She was too busy adjusting her train, letting his mother fuss over her veil like she'd been the one to raise her, like she was the one who worked 3 jobs to afford dance lessons, like she was the one who sat through every recital, every competition, every late-night practice session. I clutched my small purse, navy leather with a gold clasp, the same one Savannah had given me 2 years ago for my birthday, back when she still remembered my birthday. My hands were trembling. I could feel it starting in my shoulders, working its way down to my fingertips like electricity, looking for somewhere to ground itself. The coordinator's daughter, Ashley, maybe 16, with braces and nervous energy, shifted uncomfortably. They said you could watch from down here? The Wi-Fi is pretty good, and I made sure the angle catches everything. She held up the iPad like it was a consolation prize. It's actually a really nice view. I stared at her, a child explaining to me why I couldn't watch my own daughter's wedding from the sanctuary I helped fund through 20 years of tithing. The sanctuary, where I'd taught Sunday school, organized bake sales, and coordinated the Christmas pageant for a decade. The bride wanted, Ashley continued, then stopped. Her cheeks flushed pink. She wanted the aesthetic to be cohesive. For the photographer, aesthetic, cohesive. I was a visual disruption in my daughter's perfect day. I sat down slowly. The chair groaned under my weight. There was a coffee stain on the linoleum beneath my feet, brown and sticky, probably weeks old. I placed my heels carefully to avoid it and tried not to think about how I'd spent $800 on shoes no one would see. The screen flickered to life. There was Savannah, radiant in the dress I'd helped her choose, walking down the aisle I'd walked down at her age. Her father, my ex-husband Derek, beamed beside her in a rented tuxedo I'd also paid for, since he was between jobs again. The same man who'd missed her high school graduation because he was in Vegas with his girlfriend, but who got to give her away because that's what tradition demanded. The worst part? I didn't say anything, not one word, because it was her day. Because I told myself, don't make this about you, Patricia. Don't be that mother. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed that loving her meant disappearing when it was convenient. I pulled out my phone and opened the wedding planning app I'd been obsessing over for 18 months. Every vendor, every payment, every detail I'd coordinated while working 50-hour weeks at the hospital. My name wasn't on the program upstairs. It wasn't in the credits on the wedding website, the silent bank account, the ghost in the basement, the woman nobody wanted in the elegant shots. The iPad screen showed the couple exchanging vows. Savannah's voice was clear and strong as she promised to honor and cherish Marcus forever. I watched her face glow with happiness and felt my heart break just a little more. She looked beautiful. She looked complete. She looked like she'd never needed me at all. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and the small crowd upstairs erupted in applause. Down in the basement, I clapped too, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like a hollow mockery. Ashley gave me a sympathetic look and turned the volume up. "You can cry if you want," she whispered. "I won't tell anyone." But I didn't cry. I couldn't, because if I started, I wasn't sure I'd ever stop. Instead, I stared at the screen and wondered when I'd become so easy to erase. When had my love become something to manage rather than celebrate? When had I become the problem instead of the solution? The ceremony ended with a kiss that made everyone cheer. Through the live stream, I watched Derek meme with pride as photographers captured the moment, his daughter, his day to shine, even though he'd contributed nothing but DNA and disappointment. I stayed in that basement chair until the last guest had moved to the reception hall across town. Ashley packed up her equipment and patted my shoulder awkwardly before heading upstairs. I sat alone with my thoughts and the smell of industrial coffee and broken dreams. That's when I made the first call. It was to my lawyer, not to my daughter. Short, direct, no explanations needed, just one simple change. The trust fund I'd established for Savannah's future children, the one worth nearly $200,000, needed a new beneficiary. The Children's Hospital Foundation would be thrilled with the donation. My voice was steady, calm, controlled. When I hung up, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt the first spark of something I'd forgotten existed: self-respect. I looked around that basement one more time, at the folding chair and the coffee stains and the boxes of programs with my name nowhere to be found. Then I walked upstairs, through the empty sanctuary I'd helped build, and out into the parking lot where my car waited. I didn't go to the reception. I went home, ordered Chinese takeout, and started planning a very different kind of future. The hotel room was supposed to be for the night after the reception. I'd booked it months ago, planning to stay close in case Savannah needed anything. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed at 7 p.m., still in my sage green dress, eating lo mein from a paper container, while wedding photos flooded my social media feeds. There I wasn't, not in a single shot. The photographer had captured every detail, the handcrafted centerpieces I'd driven across 3 states to collect, the string quartet I'd auditioned 5 different groups to find, the cake from the bakery I'd discovered during my lunch breaks. But the woman who made it all possible, erased, edited out, aesthetically inconsistent. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Great party. Thanks for everything." Like I was the caterer. Like I was hired help receiving a tip. Then Savannah, "Hope you had fun at the ceremony. Sorry you couldn't make it to the reception. Next time. Next time." As if there would be a next time. As if this was just a scheduling conflict rather than a deliberate exclusion. I set the phone face down and opened my laptop. The wedding budget spreadsheet stared back at me. 18 months of meticulous planning reduced to columns of numbers. $47,000. That's what love looked like in my checking account. I scrolled through the vendor emails. The thank you notes addressed to the happy couple, the invoices with my name on them, but my presence erased from the narrative. The florist had sent photos of the arrangements with a note. So glad we could make Marcus and Savannah's day perfect. My day, too. I wanted to scream. My money, my planning, my daughter. But she wasn't, was she? Not anymore. Somewhere between the engagement party I threw and the bridal shower I hosted, I'd become a service provider rather than a mother. Useful for logistics, invisible for memories. I found the folder of backup plans I had prepared, every contingency covered, every detail managed, rain plan, vendor emergencies, timeline adjustments. I'd thought of everything except this, being deleted from my own daughter's story. The wedding photos kept coming. Marcus's family prominently featured in every group shot. His mother, Linda, who'd contributed exactly nothing but complaints, front and center in family portraits. His father, who I'd met exactly twice, walking arm in arm with the bride like he'd raised her. Where was the photo of Savannah and me? The mother who'd been there for every milestone, every heartbreak, every triumph. The woman who'd worked double shifts to afford her college tuition, who'd held her hair back when she had food poisoning, who'd driven 8 hours through a snowstorm to bring her soup when she was sick at college. I scrolled back through my phone to find the last photo of us together. Christmas, 8 months ago. Savannah was already planning the wedding then, already pulling away. In the picture, she's looking at her phone while I smile at the camera. Even then, I was disappearing. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The hotel overlooked the reception venue. I could see the lights, hear the faint sound of music carrying across the parking lot. My daughter was in there, dancing her first dance to a song I'd helped her choose, in a dress I'd helped her pick, at a party I'd funded but wasn't invited to attend. That's when I made the second call, this time to my financial advisor. The college fund I'd been building for Savannah's future children, the down payment assistance I'd saved for her first house, the emergency fund I'd labeled for baby in my planning documents, all of it redirected. "Are you sure about this, Patricia?" James asked gently. He'd been managing my money for 15 years, had seen me sacrifice vacation after vacation to build these funds. "I'm sure," I said. "Redirect everything to the scholarship fund we discussed. Full ride nursing scholarships for single mothers. Start accepting applications immediately. That's a significant donation, nearly $300,000. "I know exactly what it is," I said. "It's an investment in mothers who won't be erased from their children's stories." When I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge. This wasn't about hurting Savannah. This was about remembering that I mattered too, that my love and sacrifice deserved better than a plastic chair in a church basement. I ordered room service, drew a bath, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up worried about wedding details. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove home. No calls from Savannah, no texts asking if I was okay. Radio silence, as if I'd never been part of the day at all. Fine, let them wonder where I went. Let them realize that the woman who made their perfect day possible had other places to be. Let them sit with the silence I'd been swallowing for 18 months. I was done disappearing. The boxes in the garage had been calling to me for weeks. Not the wedding planning boxes. I burned those in the backyard fire pit 2 days after the ceremony. But the older ones, the ones I'd shoved into corners during my last move, labeled "misc" and "sort later" in my hurried handwriting. I found what I was looking for in a shoebox underneath Christmas decorations from 1998. Medical records, court documents, and a manila envelope sealed with so much tape it looked like it contained state secrets. Inside the envelope, adoption papers, not for Savannah, for me. I sat cross-legged on the concrete garage floor, papers spread around me like evidence of a crime I'd forgotten I'd committed. My birth certificate, the real one, not the amended version I'd grown up with, showed different names, different parents, a different story entirely. Patricia Ann Williams, born to Jennifer Marie Walsh, an unknown father. Surrendered at 6 weeks old to Lawrence and Diana Williams of Millbrook, Illinois. Case closed, records sealed, life rewritten. I'd known I was adopted. My parents, Lawrence and Diana, had told me when I was 12. In the awkward, clinical way people delivered difficult news in the 1980s. "We chose you," they'd said. "That makes you extra special." But they'd never told me about the envelope. Never mentioned that my biological mother had left behind letters. 3 of them, yellowed with age, written on stationery with small flowers in the margins. The first was dated 2 days after my birth. My sweet baby girl, I am 18 years old and I don't know how to be anyone's mother. I can barely take care of myself. But I want you to know that giving you up is the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I don't love you, but because I love you too much to give you a life of struggle and uncertainty. I hope whoever raises you knows how precious you are. I hope they read to you and help with homework and remember your birthday. I hope they give you everything I can. I will think about you every day for the rest of my life. Love always, Jennifer. The second letter was dated on my first birthday. Patricia, if they kept the name I chose, you're 1 year old today. I wonder if you took your first steps yet. I wonder if you're talking. I wonder if you have my eyes or your father's stubborn streak. I got my GED last month. I'm working at a diner and saving money for nursing school. Every dollar I don't spend on myself, I pretend I'm spending on you. Every choice I make, I ask myself, will this make me someone my daughter could be proud of? I hope you're happy. I hope you're loved. I hope you never have to wonder if you matter. Love always, Jennifer. The third letter was dated 10 years later. My darling Patricia, I graduated nursing school yesterday. Valedictorian. I thought about you through the entire ceremony, wondered if you were proud of your birth mother for finally making something of herself. I met a man. His name is Robert, and he's kind and patient and wants children. We're getting married next spring. I know I'll love any children we have together, but I need you to know that you were my first love. You were the reason I learned to love it all. I hope someday you'll find these letters. I hope you'll understand that letting you go was the most loving thing I could do. And I hope you know that every good thing I did with my life, I did because I wanted to be worthy of being your mother. Love always, Jennifer. I sat in that garage until the sun set, reading the letters over and over. My biological mother had loved me enough to let me go. She'd spent my entire childhood trying to become someone worthy of me, while the daughter I'd raised had spent the last year trying to erase me. The irony was suffocating. Jennifer had given me up because she wanted me to have everything she couldn't provide. I'd given Savannah everything I had, and she'd repaid me by giving me nothing, not even a seat at her wedding. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 25 years. I hired a private investigator. Jennifer Marie Walsh was now Jennifer Collins, retired RN living in Portland, Oregon. Married to Robert for 32 years. 2 children, Michael, 28, and Sarah, 24. Both college graduates, both successful, both still close to their mother, who had never stopped wondering about the daughter she gave away. The investigator's report included recent photos. Jennifer at 58 was still beautiful, with laugh lines around eyes that looked exactly like mine. She was volunteering at a women's shelter, mentoring teenage mothers, living the life she'd built after giving me mine. I stared at her address for 3 hours before making the decision that would change everything. I booked a flight to Portland. A coffee shop Jennifer chose was small and warm, with mismatched furniture and local art covering every wall. I arrived 30 minutes early and sat in a corner booth, hands shaking as I stirred sugar into coffee I wouldn't drink. When she walked in, I knew her immediately, not just from the photos, but from something deeper. The way she moved, the tilt of her head when she scanned the room. I saw my own gestures reflected back at me across 40 years of separation. She spotted me and froze. Her hand went to her throat, and for a moment, I thought she might turn around and leave. Instead, she walked over slowly, carefully, like she was approaching something sacred. "Patricia?" she whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She slid into the booth across from me, and we stared at each other in silence. Up close, the resemblance was startling. Same eyes, same nose, same way of pressing our lips together when we were nervous. "You got my letters?" she said finally. "I found them last week," I managed. "I never knew they existed." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wrote them to myself as much as to you. I needed to believe that someday you'd read them and understand." "I do understand," I said, "more than you could know. We talked for 4 hours about the decision she'd made at 18, about the family who raised me, about the nursing career we'd both chosen, about sacrifice and love and the weight of trying to do right by your children. When I told her about Savannah, about the wedding, about the slow erosion of my place in my daughter's life, Jennifer reached across the table and took my hand. "Some children don't understand the cost of love until they're older," she said gently. "Some never understand it at all." "Did you ever regret it?" I asked. "Giving me up?" She was quiet for a long time. "I regretted not being able to keep you. I regretted the circumstances that made the choice necessary. But I never regretted wanting what was best for you, even when it broke my heart." I thought about Savannah, about all the ways I bent myself to fit her idea of what a mother should be. Quiet when she needed space, generous when she needed money, invisible when she needed me gone. "I think I forgot that love isn't supposed to require you to disappear," I said. Jennifer squeezed my hand. The hardest thing I had to learn was that loving someone doesn't mean accepting mistreatment from them, even from your own child. Before I left Portland, she took me to her house. It was everything I'd imagined. Warm, welcoming, full of photos and laughter and the comfortable chaos of a family that chose to stay close. Her husband, Robert, was gracious and kind. Her children, curious and accepting. Over dinner, Sarah asked about my life, my work, my daughter. When I told them about the wedding, about being relegated to the basement, Michael shook his head. "That's not love," he said firmly. "That's convenience." Jennifer walked me to the guest room that night and hugged me at the door. "I want you to know something," she said. "Giving you life was the first loving thing I ever did. But learning to live without you taught me how to love everyone else. You made me a mother before I ever held another baby." I cried then, for the first time since the wedding. Not from sadness, but from recognition. This was what it looked like when love didn't require erasure. When sacrifice was honored rather than expected. When being someone's mother was a source of pride, not a problem to be managed. I flew home with a new phone number in my contacts and a clearer understanding of what I deserved. Savannah still hadn't called, but I wasn't waiting anymore. I had a family who wanted me now. I had a mother who understood the cost of love and a new relationship built on choice rather than obligation. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Savannah showed up on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after my trip to Portland. I was in the garden, pulling weeds and listening to a podcast about women who'd reinvented their lives after 50 when I heard the car door slam. She walked around the side of the house, still beautiful in that effortless way that had always made me proud and slightly envious. But something was different. The confidence was gone, replaced by the particular brand of anxiety that comes from realizing you might have miscalculated. "Mom?" she called out, like she wasn't sure I still lived here. I looked up from the rosebush I was pruning, garden gloves dirty, hair probably a mess. "Hello, Savannah." She stopped a few feet away, shifting her weight from foot to foot. "I tried calling." "I know." "You didn't answer." "No, I didn't." The silence stretched between us. I could see her processing this. The reality that her mother might not be available on demand anymore. "Marcus and I are back from the honeymoon," she said finally, as if this was news I'd been waiting for. "Hawaii was amazing. I have photos." I nodded and returned to my roses. The thorns caught on my gloves as I worked, but I didn't mind. There was something satisfying about the resistance, the need to be careful and deliberate. "Mom, we need to talk." I looked at her then, really looked. Dark circles under her eyes, tension in her shoulders, the same expression she'd worn as a child when she'd done something wrong and was hoping I wouldn't notice. "About what?" She glanced around the garden, taking in the new plants I'd added, the small seating area I'd created with furniture that was just for me. "About the wedding. About things." "Things?" Her mouth tightened. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I almost laughed. Harder for whom? She stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. A wedding gift from Marcus's mother, probably. Linda had very strong opinions about fragrance, as she did about everything else. "I know you're upset," she said carefully. "About the seating arrangement, Ashley explained that there was some confusion about where you were supposed to watch the ceremony." Confusion, as if I'd simply gotten lost on the way to my seat. "There was no confusion," I said calmly. "You put me in the basement because you didn't want me in your photos." Her cheeks flushed pink. It wasn't personal." "What was it then?" "It was about the aesthetic. The photographer said that too many different age groups in the shots would make the composition look unbalanced. It was a professional recommendation." I set down my pruning shears and faced her fully. "So you chose to unbalance our relationship instead." "Mom, you're being dramatic." There it was, the word that had been used to dismiss my feelings my entire adult life. Dramatic. As if hurt was a performance. As if exclusion was theater. "Am I?" I asked. "Tell me, Savannah, what would you call a mother who pays for her daughter's entire wedding and then gets banished to watch on a borrowed iPad?" She shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't banishment. It was just logistics." "Whose logistics?" The question hung in the air. We both knew the answer. Winda had orchestrated the whole thing, and Savannah had gone along with it because opposing her new mother-in-law was harder than erasing her actual mother. "Look," Savannah said, her voice taking on that impatient tone I'd learned to dread. "I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt. That wasn't the intention. But the wedding is over now, and we need to move forward. You're my mother. You'll always be my mother. This doesn't have to change anything." I walked over to the garden hose and began rinsing my gloves, taking my time. The water was cold and clear, washing away weeks of accumulated dirt. "You're right," I said finally. "I will always be your mother. But you're wrong about things not changing." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I turned off the hose and faced her again. "I mean that watching your child erase you from the most important day of her life has a way of clarifying things." "Mom, you're being dramatic," I interrupted. "You've said that already." Her jaw clenched, and for a moment I saw the child she'd been, frustrated when she couldn't manipulate her way out of consequences. "Fine," she said. "What do you want? An apology? You have it. I'm sorry you felt excluded from the wedding. I'm sorry the seating arrangement wasn't what you expected. Is that what you need to hear?" "No," I said quietly. "What I needed was for my daughter to stand up for me. What I needed was to matter enough to be included in the family photos. What I needed was to be treated like more than a credit card with emotions." Her face went pale. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my banking app. "Would you like to see the final tally? $47,000. Not including the college fund I liquidated to help with your down payment last year, or the car loan I co-signed, or the credit card bills I've been paying while you and Marcus figured out your finances." She stared at the screen and I watched her do the math. All those times she'd called with emergencies, all those loans that were never repaid, all those ways she'd made her problems my responsibility while making her life my exclusion. "I never asked you to pay for everything," she said weakly. "You didn't have to ask. You just assumed I would. The same way you assumed I'd accept being hidden in the basement. The same way you assumed I'd be fine with being erased from your story." Tears started forming in her eyes, but they felt calculated rather than genuine. "Mom, please. You're my family. You're the most important person in my life. Then why am I the only one who doesn't know it?" The question stopped her cold. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I do know it. "Show me," I said simply. "Show me one way in the last year that you've demonstrated that I matter to you beyond what I can provide." She was quiet for a long time, and I could see her searching for examples that didn't exist. Every interaction we'd had since the engagement had been transactional. Every conversation had revolved around what she needed, what she wanted, what would make her happy. She started, then stopped. This is ridiculous. You're my mother. Of course you matter. Not enough to save me a seat at your wedding, I said. Not enough to include me in family photos. Not enough to mention in your vows when you thanked everyone who helped make the day possible. Her composure finally cracked. You want to know the truth? Linda said having too many older women in the photos would make them look dated. She said modern weddings are about the couple and their future, not about dwelling on the past. And yes, I listened to her because she's Marcus's mother, and I didn't want to start our marriage by causing family drama. There it was. I was the past, something to be managed rather than celebrated. Linda was family. I was drama. And you agreed with her, I said. She looked down at her hands. I thought you'd understand. You've always understood before. I've always accepted it before, I corrected. There's a difference. I walked past her toward the house, then turned back. Savannah, I will always love you, but I won't always be available to you. Not like this. Not as the woman who disappears when it's convenient and reappears when you need something. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done being your backup plan, done being the ATM with a heartbeat, done being the mother you hide when life gets complicated. She followed me to the porch. So what? You're cutting me out of your life? Over a seating arrangement? I sat down on the swing I'd bought for myself, the one I'd installed facing the garden instead of the street, because I was tired of watching for people who never came. I'm not cutting you out, I said. I'm just not making you the center of mine anymore. I don't understand what that means. It means I'm not waiting by the phone for your calls. It means I'm not dropping everything when you need help. It means I'm not funding a lifestyle for someone who doesn't have room for me in their life. She sank into the chair across from me, finally crying real tears. Mom, you're scaring me. Good, I said gently. Maybe being scared will help you understand what I've been feeling for months. We sat in silence for a while. Birds chirped in the trees I'd planted. Bees worked the flowers I'd chosen. And the life I'd built for myself continued around us. I found something recently, I said finally. Letters from my birth mother. She gave me up when she was 18 because she loved me too much to give me a life of struggle and uncertainty. Savannah looked up sharply. You never told me you had letters from her. I didn't know they existed, but reading them made me understand something about love and sacrifice that I'd forgotten. What? That real love doesn't require you to erase yourself. That sacrifice should be honored, not expected. That being someone's mother is supposed to be a source of pride, not a problem to be managed. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and young. What do you want from me, Mom? I looked at her, this beautiful woman I'd raised, this stranger who'd forgotten how to see me. I want you to decide if you want a mother or just a bank account, I said, because I'm not willing to be both anymore. Savannah didn't call for 6 weeks. I wasn't counting the days exactly, but I was aware of them the way you're aware of a healing wound, checking periodically to see how it's progressing, whether the pain is lessening or if you need to change the bandage. During those 6 weeks, I did things I hadn't done in years. I took a pottery class at the community center, where I learned I had terrible hand-eye coordination, but excellent patience. I joined a book club where middle-aged women discussed literature and life with equal intensity. I started volunteering at the literacy center, teaching adults to read, something that reminded me daily that it's never too late to learn something new. I also flew back to Portland twice, building a relationship with Jennifer that felt simultaneously brand new and deeply familiar. We were both nurses, both mothers, both women who'd learned that love sometimes requires impossible choices. But where I'd been taught that sacrifice meant erasure, she'd learned that sacrifice could coexist with self-respect. You can love someone completely and still have boundaries, she told me during my second visit as we walked through the rose garden at the Botanical Conservatory. The hardest lesson I learned as a mother was that enabling someone isn't the same as loving them. I thought about that conversation often during those quiet weeks. About enablement and love. About boundaries and forgiveness. About whether being a good mother meant being an available mother, or if sometimes it meant being an unavailable one. On a Wednesday evening in early autumn, as I was preparing dinner for one and listening to jazz, the doorbell rang. This time, Savannah wasn't alone. Marcus stood beside her on my porch, looking uncomfortable and slightly damp from the light rain that had been falling all day. He was a good man. I'd always thought so, but seeing him now, I wondered if good was enough when it came without backbone. "Hi, Mom," Savannah said softly. She looked different, thinner, older somehow. The effortless confidence had been replaced by something more tentative, more real. I let them in without a word, hung their jackets in the front closet, and offered coffee. They both declined. We sat in the living room I'd redecorated in the weeks since the wedding. Gone were the family photos that had centered around Savannah's milestones. In their place were prints I'd chosen because I liked them, books I'd bought to read rather than display, and flowers I'd cut from my own garden. "The house looks different," Savannah said, glancing around. "It is different." Marcus cleared his throat. "Mrs. Williams, I want to apologize for my part in what happened at the wedding. I should have spoken up about the seating arrangement. I should have insisted that you be included in the family photos." I looked at him carefully. "Why didn't you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Honestly, I was afraid of causing conflict with my mother. She had very specific ideas about how she wanted things to look. And I thought it would be easier to just go along with her plans." "Easier for whom?" "For everyone," he said, then paused. "No, that's not true. Easier for me. I didn't want to deal with the drama." At least he was honest. I gave him credit for that. "And now?" I asked. Now I realized that avoiding one uncomfortable conversation caused a much bigger problem. I failed as a husband by not protecting my wife's relationship with her mother. And I failed as a son-in-law by not standing up for someone who's been nothing but generous and kind to me. I nodded. It was a good apology, better than I'd expected. But apologies are just words until they're backed by action. "Savannah?" I said, turning to my daughter. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, without the dramatic sobs she'd employed as a child when she wanted something. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "About love not requiring you to erase yourself. About sacrifice being honored instead of expected." She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I called Grandma Diana last week," she continued. "I wanted to understand something about family, about what it means to be a mother. And she told me stories about you that I'd never heard before." I felt my chest tighten. Diana, my adoptive mother, had been dead for 3 years. Savannah must have met my Aunt Carol. Stories about how you worked 3 jobs to keep me in dance classes. How you gave up your nursing school dreams the first time to stay home with me when I was sick with pneumonia for 2 months. How you turned down promotion after promotion because they required travel, and you didn't want to miss my school events. She was sobbing now, the kind of deep, body-shaking tears that come from a place of genuine recognition. "I never knew any of that, Mom. You never told me." "Because that's what mothers do," I said simply. "We make choices and we live with them. But I never thanked you, not once. I just expected it all, took it all for granted. And when it came time for my wedding, when it came time to honor the people who made me who I am, I chose someone else's comfort over yours." Marcus reached over and took her hand. We both did. "I've been seeing a therapist," Savannah said. "Dr. Martinez. She specializes in family relationships, and she helped me understand something that I think I've been avoiding my whole adult life." She looked directly at me, her eyes red but clear. "I've been treating you like you exist to serve me, instead of like you're a person with your own needs and feelings. I've been taking your love for granted because I knew it would always be there, no matter how badly I treated it." I nodded slowly. "And?" And that's not love. That's exploitation. The word hung in the air between us. Exploitation. It was harsh, clinical, accurate. Dr. Martinez said that healthy relationships require reciprocity. That love should be a circular flow, not a one-way drain. She asked me to think about the last time I did something for you that cost me something I wanted for myself. She paused, her voice breaking. I couldn't think of a single example. I felt something inside me shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. This was what accountability looked like. This was what it sounded like when someone stopped defending their actions and started examining them. What do you want to do about that? I asked. I want to learn how to be your daughter instead of just your responsibility, she said. I want to understand what it means to love someone without taking advantage of them. I want to earn back the right to call you mom. Marcus cleared his throat. We also want to repay you for the wedding expenses. It's going to take us time, but we've already started. We canceled the honeymoon credit card, and we're selling the car my parents bought us as a wedding gift. It's not much, but it's a start. I looked at these two young people sitting in my living room, finally understanding the weight of what they'd taken and the cost of what they'd lost. Not my money. Money could be replaced. But my trust, my place in their family, my sense of mattering in my daughter's life. The money isn't the issue, I said carefully. The money was always freely given. What I needed was to be seen as more than a wallet with feelings. I know, Savannah whispered, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. We sat in silence for a while. Rain continued pattering against the windows, and the jazz from my kitchen radio drifted faintly through the house. It was the kind of silence that felt full rather than empty, weighted with possibility rather than endings. There's something else, Savannah said finally. I want you to meet someone. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair. This is Jennifer Collins. She reached out to me through social media last week. My breath caught. What? She said she'd been in touch with you, that you'd been building a relationship. She said she hoped someday she might be able to meet me, to thank me for having such a wonderful daughter. I stared at the photo, then at Savannah's face. She said something else too, Savannah continued. She said that loving someone sometimes means stepping back so they can grow, and that maybe it was time for me to step forward and love you the way you deserve to be loved. Tears started forming in my own eyes now. She said that? She said that giving you up was the hardest thing she ever did, but that watching you raise me from the distance was the proudest. She said I was lucky to have a mother who chose me every single day, even when I made it hard for her to do it. Marcus squeezed Savannah's hand. We'd like to invite her for Thanksgiving. If you're okay with that, if you think she'd want to come. I looked at them both, these flawed, learning, growing human beings who were finally beginning to understand what family actually meant. I think she'd like that very much, I said. And Mom, Savannah said, her voice small and hopeful, would you be willing to try again with us, to let us learn how to be better? I considered the question carefully. Not the easy yes I would have given 6 months ago, not the automatic forgiveness that had enabled years of taking me for granted, but a thoughtful, conditional possibility. I'm willing to try, I said, but things will be different. How different? I'm not available on demand anymore. I'm not the solution to your financial problems. I'm not the woman who disappears when it's convenient for your new family dynamics. She nodded rapidly. I understand. I don't think you do yet, I said gently, but I hope you will. I hope you'll learn that loving someone means respecting their boundaries, honoring their sacrifices, and including them in the story instead of editing them out. I want to learn that, she said. I want to be worthy of being your daughter. Those words, worthy of being your daughter, echoed something Jennifer had written in her letters. The desire to become someone deserving of love, rather than someone who simply expected it. Then we'll take it one day at a time, I said. One conversation at a time, one choice at a time. Marcus stood up first. Mrs. Williams, thank you for giving us this chance. I know we don't deserve it. Maybe not yet, I said. but deserve is something you earn going forward, not something you're owed because of the past. Savannah hugged me before they left, and for the first time in years, it felt like she was really there in the moment, instead of already thinking about the next thing she needed. After they drove away, I sat on my porch swing and watched the ring, not waiting for them to call, not anxious about their approval, just present in my own life, in my own space. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. How did it go? I typed back, like a beginning, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Jennifer arrived on a Tuesday, 3 days before Thanksgiving. I picked her up at the airport, and we drove through the familiar streets of my neighborhood while she marveled at the trees I'd pointed out in photos, the park where I'd taught Savannah to ride a bike, the coffee shop where I'd spent countless mornings grading nursing school papers before I'd given up that dream the first time. It looks exactly like I imagined, she said, gazing out the passenger window. Like a place where you could build a good life. I tried, I said. You succeeded. Look at what you accomplished. The career, the home, the daughter you raised. That's not trying, Patricia. That's succeeding against difficult odds. That evening, as we prepared dinner together in my kitchen, she asked the question I'd been expecting. Are you nervous about tomorrow? I considered this as I chopped vegetables for stuffing. Nervous wasn't the right word. Cautious, maybe. Hopeful but guarded. I'm curious, I said finally. Curious to see if the changes are real or just temporary guilt. Jennifer nodded as she seasoned the turkey. Robert's mother used to say that apologies are just words until they're backed by changed behavior. It took me years to understand what she meant. What did she mean? She meant that sorry is a promise, not just a statement. When someone says they're sorry, they're promising to do better. The real measure of an apology is whether the behavior that necessitated it actually changes. Savannah and Marcus arrived Thursday morning with armfuls of flowers and a nervous energy that reminded me of teenagers meeting their girlfriend's parents for the first time. They dressed carefully, not overdressed, but thoughtfully, and they both hugged Jennifer, like they'd been anticipating this moment for weeks. Thank you for coming, Savannah said to Jennifer, and thank you for sharing Mom with me all these years without me even knowing. Jennifer smiled. I've been sharing her with the world. She's been taking care of people her entire life. I just got lucky enough to be the one who gave her life to begin with. We cooked together, all four of us, in a dance that felt both new and familiar. Marcus proved surprisingly competent with side dishes. Jennifer told stories about her other children that made us all laugh. And Savannah moved through my kitchen like she was remembering how to be comfortable in her childhood home. At one point, as we were setting the table, Savannah pulled me aside. I have something for you, she said, handing me a small wrapped package. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. Inside was a silver locket, simple and elegant, with a photo of us from her high school graduation. But it wasn't one of the posed pictures from that day. It was a candid shot someone had taken of us laughing together after the ceremony. I found it when I was going through old photos, she said. It reminded me of who we used to be together, who I want us to be again. I fastened the locket around my neck, and for the first time in months, I wore a piece of jewelry that connected me to my daughter without feeling like a chain. During dinner, Marcus stood up to make a toast. I want to thank the women at this table, he said, raising his glass. Jennifer, for making the hardest decision a mother can make and trusting that love sometimes means letting go. Patricia, for proving that family isn't just about blood, but about choice and sacrifice and showing up day after day, year after year. He turned to Savannah. And my wife, for being brave enough to look at her mistakes and commit to doing better. Then he looked back at Jennifer and me. And I want to make a promise. I promise to be the kind of husband who supports his wife's relationships with the people who love her. I promise to be the kind of son-in-law who honors the woman who raised the person I love most in the world. Savannah stood up then. I want to make a promise too. I promise to stop taking your love for granted, Mom. I promise to show up for you the way you've always shown up for me. And And I promise to include you in our family in a way that honors who you are, not just what you can provide. She paused, tears forming in her eyes. And I promise to be the kind of daughter that both of my mothers can be proud of. We clinked glasses as the sun set outside my dining room windows, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the sense of being not just tolerated or needed, but truly valued. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee and leftover pie, Jennifer pulled out a manila envelope. "I have something I want to share with all of you," she said. "Something I've been working on since Patricia and I reconnected." Inside the envelope were documents, legal papers, but also something else. A family tree she'd been researching, connecting our stories across the decades. "I wanted Savannah to understand her full history," Jennifer explained. "Not just the story of a teenage mother who gave up her baby, but the story of two women who loved the same child in different ways and different times." She spread the papers across the coffee table, showing how our lives had intersected and diverged and somehow found their way back to each other. "This is your maternal grandfather," she said, pointing to a photo. "He was a jazz musician. That's where your love of music comes from, Savannah." She showed us photos of relatives I'd never known existed, stories of strength and resilience that had been passed down through generations. "And this," she said, pulling out a final document, "is something I had my lawyer prepare. It was an amendment to her will, establishing a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees, the Patricia Williams Fund for women who choose love over easy." I stared at the document, unable to speak. "Every woman deserves to choose love without losing herself," Jennifer said quietly. "Every mother deserves to be seen and valued and included in the story she helped create." That night, after Marcus and Savannah had gone home and Jennifer had gone to bed in the guest room, I sat on my porch swing and thought about the distance I'd traveled. Not just the miles between who I'd been and who I was becoming, but the emotional geography of learning to value myself as much as I valued others. My phone buzzed with a text from Savannah. "Thank you for today. Thank you for not giving up on us. I love you, Mom." I typed back, "I love you too. See you Sunday for dinner?" Her response came quickly. "We'll bring dessert. And Mom, next time we take family photos, you're front and center where you belong." I smiled and put the phone away. Tomorrow I would wake up in a house that felt like home again, with relationships that were being rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. I would wake up as a woman who had learned that love didn't require disappearing, that being a mother didn't mean being invisible, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your children is teaching them how to love you properly. I would wake up seen, valued, and finally free. The invitation was cream-colored with gold lettering, nothing elaborate, but elegant in its simplicity. Patricia Williams and Jennifer Collins cordially invite you to celebrate the first annual Mothers Who Choose Love Over Easy Scholarship Brunch. I held it up to the light streaming through my kitchen window, admiring the way Jennifer's calligraphy caught the morning sun. We decided to make it an annual event, a gathering that would honor the mothers who'd contributed to the scholarship fund and celebrate the recipients who were using it to build better lives. This year's recipient was Maria Santos, a 32-year-old woman with 3 children who was starting nursing school in the fall. Her story, working 2 jobs while taking prerequisite courses at night, studying at the kitchen table while her kids did homework, reminded me so much of my own journey that I cried reading her application. "Mom?" Savannah's voice called from the hallway. "Do you need help with anything?" I smiled. She'd started coming over on Saturday morning 6 months ago, initially to help with household projects, but gradually just to spend time together, real time, without agendas or emergencies or requests for financial help. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just admiring our handiwork." She appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair in a messy bun, wearing jeans and one of Marcus's old college sweatshirts. It was a far cry from the perfectly polished woman who'd gotten married a year ago, and I liked this version better. "The RSVPs look good," she said, settling into the chair across from me with her coffee mug. 37 confirmed so far, including Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez had become more than Savannah's therapist. She'd become a family resource, helping us navigate the rebuilding process with professional guidance and personal warmth. She'd been the one to suggest that Savannah and Marcus attend a financial literacy course, not because they were bad with money, but because they'd never learned to think of it as a finite resource that required planning and respect. "Any word from Jennifer?" I asked. "She landed an hour ago. Marcus is picking her up from the airport." Savannah paused, then added, "She's bringing her granddaughter, the one who just graduated high school?" "Emma," I said. "She's starting college in the fall, pre-med. Like her grandmother wanted to be," Savannah said quietly. We'd learned a lot about Jennifer's story over the past year, how she dreamed of being a doctor before pregnancy changed her trajectory, how she channeled that ambition into nursing, then into mentoring other women, then into the scholarship fund that was now changing lives. "Speaking of college," Savannah said, "I have some news." I looked up from the invitation, noting the careful way she was holding her coffee mug, the slight tension in her shoulders that meant she was about to share something significant. "Good news or complicated news?" She laughed. "I think good news. I hope good news." She took a breath. "I got accepted into the graduate program at State, the one for nonprofit administration." I set down my coffee carefully. "The one you applied for without telling me you were applying?" She had the grace to look sheepish. "I wanted to make sure I got in before I said anything. I didn't want to get your hopes up if it didn't work out." "My hopes up?" "You've always supported my dreams, even when I didn't know what they were. Even when I changed my mind a dozen times. I wanted to have something real to show you for once." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Savannah, your dreams don't exist for my approval. They exist for your fulfillment. I know that now," she said. "But I also know that I want to do something meaningful with my life. Something that honors the sacrifices you made for me. The scholarship fund gave me the idea. What if I could help other families navigate the kind of challenges we faced? It was a good dream, rooted in growth and service, rather than just ambition. The kind of dream that suggested she'd learned something important about the difference between success and significance." "When would you start?" "Next fall, part-time, so I can keep working. Marcus is supportive. He says it's my turn to pursue something that matters to me." Marcus had changed too over the past year. The nervous, conflict-avoiding young man who'd stood on my porch in the rain had evolved into someone more confident, more willing to speak up when situations required it. He'd been the one to suggest they move into a smaller apartment so they could pay me back faster. He'd been the one to tell his mother that her comments about old-fashioned parenting styles weren't welcome in their home. "I'm proud of you," I said, and meant it. "Even though I'm starting graduate school at 32, especially because you're starting graduate school at 32, it shows you're making the choice because it's right for you, not because someone else expects it." The doorbell rang, and we both looked toward the front of the house. "That'll be Jennifer and Emma," Savannah said, standing up. "Are you ready for this?" I looked around my kitchen, at the home I'd reclaimed and redesigned over the past year, at the daughter who'd learned to show up without being asked, who'd learned to contribute without being prompted, who'd learned to love without taking. "I'm ready," I said. A brunch was held in the community center where I'd taken pottery classes, the same room where I'd first started learning to do things for myself rather than for others. We decorated it simply. Fresh flowers, white tablecloths, a banner Jennifer had made by hand that read "Love over Easy." Maria Santos sat at the head table with her 3 children, looking nervous and proud in a dress she'd probably bought specifically for this occasion. When it came time for her to speak, she stood up with shaking hands and a voice full of determination. 2 years ago, I was working at a laundromat and a gas station, trying to save enough money for college prerequisites while my kids ate cereal for dinner more nights than I care to admit, she said. "I thought nursing school was impossible, too expensive, too demanding, too much for a single mother with no support system." She paused, looking around the room at the faces watching her with encouragement and understanding. This scholarship didn't just give me money for tuition. It gave me permission to believe that my dreams mattered. That being a good mother didn't mean sacrificing everything I wanted for myself. That I could serve my family by serving others. She turned toward Jennifer and me. Thank you for seeing mothers like me. Thank you for understanding that sometimes love means taking care of yourself so you can better take care of everyone else. The applause was warm and sustained, the kind of clapping that comes from genuine emotion rather than polite obligation. I looked around the room and saw other mothers, some who'd contributed to the scholarship fund, others who'd benefited from similar programs, all of them connected by the understanding that motherhood was both sacrifice and strength. After the formal program ended, as people mingled and shared stories over coffee and pastries, Jennifer appeared at my elbow. "Feeling accomplished?" she asked. "Feeling useful," I said. "There's a difference." "There is indeed," she smiled. "You know what I love most about this?" "What?" "It's not about you or me anymore. It's about what comes next, about the women we'll help, the families that will be stronger because mothers had support instead of just expectations." I watched Savannah across the room, deep in conversation with Maria about the challenges of balancing school and parenting. She was asking questions, really listening to the answers, engaging as someone who wanted to understand, rather than someone who was just waiting for her turn to talk. "She's going to be good at this," Jennifer said, following my gaze. "At what?" "At helping families heal, at understanding what it takes to build relationships based on respect instead of just obligation." Emma, Jennifer's granddaughter, approached us with the confidence of someone who'd grown up knowing she was valued for who she was, not just what she could provide. "Mrs. Williams," she said, "I wanted to thank you for what you and my grandmother are doing. My mom told me about your story, about learning to love yourself as much as you love others. I think that's something every woman needs to hear, especially young women," I said. "It's easier to learn boundaries early than to rebuild them later. I hope I remember that when I'm older," she said, "when I have kids of my own someday." I looked at this bright, articulate 18-year-old who was heading to college with the confidence that comes from being raised by people who'd learned the difference between love and exploitation. "I think you will," I said. As the afternoon wound down and guests began to leave, Savannah helped me pack up the leftover flowers and decorations. "Mom," she said as we folded tablecloths, "I have something I want to ask you." I braced myself, old habits dying hard. "Would you like to go to dinner next weekend? Just the two of us?" Not because I need anything, not because there's a crisis or a favor to ask, just because I'd like to spend time with you. I smiled. "I'd love that." "Good. I already made reservations at that new Italian place downtown. My treat." "You don't have to pay for dinner, sweetheart." "I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference." There was indeed. The same difference between obligation and choice, between expectation and gift, between being needed and being wanted. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and thought about the year that had passed, about the wedding that had broken something open in me, about the letters that had revealed hidden truths, about the relationships that had been rebuilt on stronger foundations. My phone buzzed with a text from Savannah. "Thank you for today. Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like. I'm proud to be your daughter." I typed back, "I'm proud to be your mother." And for the first time in my adult life, both of those things were equally, completely true. Outside my window, the roses I'd planted were blooming again, stronger and more vibrant than they'd been the year before. Like everything else in my life, they'd needed time to establish strong roots before they could truly flourish. But now, finally, they were magnificent,